What's up YouTube? I'm Mike and today I'm back with another white tee video. I've got basically some time off in between jobs right now, so that's why you've been seeing the volume of content. I'm going to try to dedicate myself to continuously doing that. Let me get some more light in here so you guys can see my beautiful face in all its glory. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I have basically for the past over a year been doing a lot of experimentation. I've done some crazy cycles. Just to give you a couple ideas, if you're not a longtime viewer of my channel, I tried running what I called the triple 19 mafia cycle, where I ran 3 19 Nor drugs. I ran Trenbolone, Nandrolone, and Mint together. I have run I'm still running a no testosterone cycle right now. Right now, currently, I'm running 0 testosterone, trying to get my body to function without it for reasons that are outside the scope of this video. I have run a lot of crazy cycles that have caused a lot of really negative, side effects, and basically just caused like my body to fluctuate all over the place, psychologically, physically. My D game performance has been all over the place. So today I want to kind of do something different and take a break from all of the crazy stuff that doesn't work and talk about some of my favorite steroid cycles ever for various different purposes. It's been really a long time since I made content that I think is really more applicable to the average user. Most of you guys don't want to go through the misery that I go through. This channel has become sort of a science platform of trying to, pave my own way and try unique things to see if I could come up with unique experiences. But at the end of the day, most of my experience, most of the experiments that I run are not going to be for the average user, and they're not even things that I would choose to do long term because they come with too many negative side effects. So before I get into my favorite steroid cycles ever, let me preface how I came to this conclusion. So we're only going to be talking about steroid cycles. I'm not saying this is the best cycle for each of these purposes. What I am saying is that the cost-benefit analysis, in my opinion, on these cycles, so for example, like the best bulking cycle. When I talk about the best bulking cycle, I'm not saying that this is the cycle that will put the absolute maximum amount of tissue on your frame in the shortest period of time, barring all other consequences. What I'm saying is that if you're looking for a cycle that is both functional and building muscle, but also doesn't come with a gigantic number of side effects that make you miserable the entire time, that's what this video is about. So the qualification for each of these cycles is going to be that they work, but that they don't make your life an absolute living hell. Often, living in hell is not necessarily for me, back in the day, when I would go on steroid cycles, I was going to be on for 16 to 20 weeks maximum anyway. And so, like, let's say you're using a drug like Trenbolone E, a lot of the negative side effects are not going to start really adding up until you get to weeks like 8 or 9. And so even if you do a huge blast and you end up with some pretty negative side effects, you're really only talking about like a short period of your life or of that particular year, if you're only doing like a couple of blasts a year, which is the way, you should be doing it maybe. I stay on year round now because I'm just a perpetual lab rat. So again, getting back to the more conventional way of doing anabolics, which is where you're going to go on a cycle for say 16 to 20 weeks, and then you're going to take some period of time off. Some people will say you need to be off at least as long as you're on. Some people, where'd my drink go? Oh crap. Some people will say that you need to be off twice as long as you're on. I very rarely was ever able to stay off even as long as I was on, which is how I ended up just basically running anabolics long term. So again, let me get a sip real quick for those ASMR people in the audience. I just had a muscle milk, and if I don't drink carbs while making this video, you will watch me have a blood sugar crash in the middle of the video. So here we go. I know a lot of you guys come to my channel looking for cycle advice, and then I yammer and carry on for too long, so let's get to it. I'm going to stick in a cycle here in the very beginning that is going to be highly controversial. I understand that this is a highly controversial cycle, but it does fit the requirements for a cycle that is basically maximum pros, minimal costs. This might be, of all the possible ways that you could build more muscle than you are naturally building, this might be the safest of all cycles. And let me couch this. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not telling you what to do with yourself or with anybody else that I'm about to reference that you could apply this to. Okay? Don't come at me. If you either A, are an adult male that has very low testosterone levels, like say 200 or 300, this could be because you're elderly, this could be just because you're me, and by the time you were in your late 30s, you had like a sub 400 nanogram per deciliter testosterone level, or hypothetically speaking, not that you should ever do this, it's probably not legal, but let's say you happen to know a minor child who is prepubescent or in the early stages of puberty, and that child has had their testosterone levels checked, and they're in one of the Tanner stages. I don't, you have to look up the Tanner stages of puberty, but basically their natural testosterone level is in that low 300 to 400 range. If a minor or any other person were so inclined as to try to minorly improve their testosterone levels to get a little bit of extra performance in the gym with effectively zero side effects, one cycle you could run is a cycle of HCG only. Human chorionic gonadotropin. This was something that we used to all be able to get from our TRT clinics until they shut this down and they made it, they classified it as a biologic, and so now it's only available with prescription, unless of course you have alternative methodologies for finding it. HCG will, I want to say minorly raise your testosterone, but really I think it can double your testosterone levels if they are very low. So for example, if you were, say, I don't know, like 13 years old, and you had a testosterone that was down in the 400s range, a cycle of HCG somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 500 IUs of HCG every other day could result in the doubling of your testosterone level. So you could take a child who's a minor, prepubescent or early puberty and basically double their testosterone range from, say, like 300 to 400 up to 800 or higher. Because you were using HCG and not a steroid molecule like testosterone, this child would technically still be natty. There would be nothing that they could really find on any blood work that I know of, other than that if this child were to go to the doctor and have their testosterone levels checked, they would be ranked at a higher Tanner stage. So the doctor would think that they were farther along in puberty than they otherwise would have been naturally. This can be very productive at adding a little extra, basically kind of getting a head start into the bodybuilding game. So if you've got a child, you know, if you happen to be a child, again, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just saying, in this hypothetical world that no one should ever engage in, if you were dealing with somebody who was hell-bent on becoming a bodybuilder and they knew that's what they wanted to do, or at least they thought that's what they wanted to do for a very young age, which of course is why you should never do this, because no person that's 13 or 14 years old should be making lifelong decisions for their body. It's why we don't allow 14-year-olds to drink. We don't allow 14-year-olds to join the military. There are very good reasons for not trusting that a 14-year-old knows what he wants to do for the rest of his life. That being said, there are plenty of 14-year-olds who are out abusing street drugs and alcohol and doing all kinds of other things that are equally or more deleterious to their health. So, if you have a very, very low testosterone level for whatever reason, and you just want to raise that up to probably the low end of normal, you could do that with HCG and you would have little to no side effects. I say little to no side effects because the only side effects you're going to be getting are whatever side effects you would basically get from that natural level of testosterone anyway. So let's say you have a 400, you double it to 800. 800 is the high end of the range of normal. The normal range for an adult male is 300 nanograms per deciliter up to about 1100 nanograms per deciliter. So an 800 will put you back basically in the normal physiological range. If you are in your 20s to 30s to 40s, this is not going to revolutionize your physique. It's probably not going to make any changes at all. It could just make you feel better. It might restore some of your sex drive, and it might help you to shed a little body fat and have a little better aesthetic in the gym. So that's cycle number one. Because you're taking HCG, you're not going to be shutting down your body's natural production. So if you're dealing with a minor, you don't want to screw him up for long term, then using just HCG, this is medically documented. If you have any doubts, you can please check me. Anytime you think I'm lying to you, please look up the use of HCG in children. What you will generally find is that it is prescribed for things like small stature or hypogonadism. Children who are not naturally going into puberty can be used as a kickstart for that. What you could possibly choose to do alongside this, if you were so inclined, is that you could use growth hormone. So growth hormone could add a little extra to the effect. It will, in minors, it will, when you just administer growth hormone to a minor, you are not going to be able to change their adult height. So let's say you have a child who's kind of on the short end of the spectrum. He's not really keeping up with his peers as far as height goes. Let's say your kid is projected to be 5'8", so he's pretty short when he's in his early teens, he's getting picked on. Human growth hormone, properly dosed, will basically get him to his adult height faster. But it will not, generally speaking, add any considerable amount of height to his frame. So if he's genetically going to be 5'8", and you give him HCG during puberty, he's going to get to 5'8" faster, but probably not much taller than that. There are studies and ways postulated that you could actually take a child whose projected adult height is going to be 5'8" and make him 6 foot tall. I've already talked about this in another video. Maybe I'll link it at the end. It's outside the scope of this video. So that's cycle number one, which is not a cycle at all. It's just going to be using HCG to primarily boost your testosterone levels back into the normal range if they are otherwise very low. Cycle number one, this is the first actual cycle. If you were looking to really do anything, you could bulk with this. You could cut with this in theory if you properly managed your AI. This used to be my kind of go-to cookie cutter. This was basically my cruise. You know, I started out taking TRT, 200 milligrams of test per week. That gave me a total testosterone level of about 1500 nanograms per deciliter on the peak, which means that I was super physiological for a part of the week, and then I would probably drop down into the normal range or be at the high normal range year round. This is what true hormone replacement therapy, that is the objective of true hormone replacement therapy, is to keep you at the high end of normal for the maximum amount of time. And if you have been like me, and you know, when you started TRT, you were at 300 or 400 nanograms per deciliter of testosterone, you will grow on TRT alone. I put on about 12 pounds of lean body mass on TRT alone. For me, this is just me, TRT is not quite enough to keep me happy. So if I was going to do the most basic growth cycle, you could use this if you were cutting and you were trying to hold the muscle that you have. For me, the safest all-around cycle is 500 milligrams of testosterone per week. This is going to, one of the variables when you get into testosterone is now you're going to be shutting down your natural testosterone production. So you're going to want to run HCG alongside this. So, person running 500 milligrams of testosterone per week, if that's me, I would run 500 IUs of HCG twice per week. So on the same days that I do my testosterone injections, I would also inject 500 units of, I said IUs, I think I meant units, 500 units of HCG, so that I would continue to have my testicles would stay full and functioning. You never want to shut down your own natural testosterone production. There are a host of side effects that come with it. I know a lot of guys who don't seem to care about those side effects. It seems to, for me, it seems to cause a reduction in sperm volume, and it causes a reduction in orgasm quality. That's what I seem to experience when I crash my natural production, which I did, well, we will get into that. So if you want your most basic, and this could be used for beginners, this could be used for somebody who's cutting, this could be used by somebody who just wants to feel good all the time. So prior to me deciding that testosterone was not the way for me, I would really never go below this cycle. So this would be my cruise cycle. Anytime I got off of a big blast, I would just drop back down to 500 milligrams of testosterone. This would put my total testosterone level at about 3,800 nanograms per deciliter. That being said, while that is 3 times the top end of the normal reference range, on 500 milligrams alone, I could maintain all of my biomarkers. So my blood pressure would be in line, my lipid panel would be in line, everything. If I was to go to the doctor, as long as they didn't pull a testosterone check, everything else would be perfectly in line. I would have great libido as long as I was managing my estrogen. That is the caveat to running testosterone. Everyone is different. You have to know what type of aromatizer you are. For me, I aromatize estrogen at a high rate. So on 500 milligrams of testosterone, in order to keep my estradiol level, also known as E2, in the middle or top end of the range, I need 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day, or 3 milligrams of Arimidex per week. I don't love having to take that much Arimidex. For me, it is a 0 side effect drug. I can just eat Arimidex like Skittles. I've gone as high as 7 to 10 milligrams of Arimidex in a week with absolutely no negative side effects. Everything I'm talking about here, 500 milligrams of testosterone, 3 milligrams of Arimidex per week, and 500 IUs of HCG twice a week, that for me is the low end of the range. I can grow muscle on this cycle, I could cut on this cycle, I could main gain on this cycle. I could just use this cycle as a perpetual cruise that's going to allow me to be have a reasonable amount of aggression and good sexual function and good confidence, and have a really great aesthetic. At 500 milligrams, you're not going to be storing a lot of body fat around the midsection as long as you're eating a proper healthy diet, and your gym performance is going to be good. That being said, this is not going to be anything remarkable, guys. If you jump on a 500 milligram cycle expecting to turn into Jay Cutler, you are not going to have that experience. It is very likely that a person on 500 milligram cycle of test is really not going to feel much of anything at all. In the first few weeks, you might notice increased heart rate, or you might get a sensation of your heart sort of pounding in your chest. This will almost certainly only occur for the first few weeks of your new cycle, which is what I call the come-up period. When the hormone is rising in your system, that's when you feel the most acute psychological effects and the most physiological effects. Once you get stable on a dose of 500 milligrams of testosterone per week, you will forget you're even running it. You will almost certainly not feel anything. And that's the thing about steroid cycles, guys, that you always need to keep in mind if you choose to run anything long term. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. Normal is just whatever has been going on for you the longest, right? So if your normal testosterone level is 300 nanograms per deciliter and you jump on a 500 milligram test cycle, you're going to feel that shit. You are definitely going to feel a lot better very fast. You're going to build muscle, you're going to have better libido, you're going to have better self-esteem and confidence. All of these things in your life are suddenly going to get markedly better. But once you've been on 500 milligrams for a while, 500 milligrams just becomes your new normal. And so relative to where you're not going to have this big difference to compare, you're going to forget the old you very quickly. And before long, whatever your state of mind is, whatever your aesthetic is, whatever your strength is, wherever you're at 500 milligrams per week of testosterone, is just going to become your new normal. It's just going to feel natural. It's not going to feel, you're not going to feel like you're on blast. And that's where guys start mixing and doing different things and adding compounds. So that's what we're going to get to next. So let's say you want a cycle that has the maximum amount of gains with the minimal amount of side effects, that is going to either allow you to go into a deep calorie deficit to do a pretty decent cut. I'm not going to say that this is going to allow you to get on stage, although it certainly probably would allow you at a lower level. This is not going to be in any way, shape, or form a pro bodybuilder cutting cycle. But if you're trying to get ripped for the beach, if you're doing maybe you're doing your first show, something local, if you're not at the ultra competitive level, the cycle I'm about to give you is going to be plenty for you to hold muscle in a calorie deficit. It's going to be great for going to the beach. It's going to be great for building strength. That's the other thing. If you run this cycle and you are not in a calorie deficit, if you are a power lifter, if you are wanting to gain, you could definitely build muscle on this cycle, especially if it's your first time running it. This cycle is kind of multi-purpose, okay? It's going to give you ungodly strength, especially the first time you run it. And it's going to give you a hard, peeled, vascular, chiseled, amazing look. Whether you are in bulking calories or cutting calories, either one, you're going to look phenomenal on this cycle. Obviously, you're going to be leaner and tighter and better looking if you're in a cut. But if you're in a main gain type of bulk where you're not getting sloppy with your calories and you're managing your estrogen, then you are going to look phenomenal on this cycle. The cycle is going to be testosterone, trenbolone, Anavar. I'm hesitant to give you any numbers because it's going to be different for everybody. I will give you my numbers so that you can compare by. So for example, I might run this one of two ways. I might choose to run 500 milligrams of test E or C alongside 100 to 300 milligrams of trenbolone, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm wanting to do a blast, I'm wanting to get freakishly strong, I want to build an appreciable amount of muscle on my frame, and or I'm cutting very aggressively and I'm going into a deep calorie deficit, that's going to depend on how much trenbolone I run. If you want the maximum gains for the minimal amount of side effects like I talked about, then for me, in my body, that would be 500 milligrams of test, 100 milligrams of Tren E per week, and up to 30 milligrams of Anavar per day. These are very moderate doses in the greater scheme of bodybuilding. This, again, is not going to turn you into Jay Cutler. It just might be enough to win you your first local low-level show, though. I would argue that it's probably plenty to win a show. If you have pretty good genetics to begin with, you could probably pretty easily win a show with with these compounds. When I run this cycle, I just start pinning the 500 milligrams of test, which I probably would have been on anyway. I add in 100 milligrams of Trenbolone E in 2 doses per week, split that into 2 even doses per week, 50 milligrams on Monday, say, and 50 milligrams on Thursday, and then repeat. And then for me, I feel Anavar very acutely psychologically. So I will start the Anavar at 10 milligrams twice a day. So I would take 10 milligrams in the morning with a Red Bull or a Monster. Again, let me get another sip of my Monster. There are studies that have proven this. I have made a video about it. Combining Anavar and caffeine seems to increase the effects of Anavar. You will feel the Anavar quite a bit more acutely if you combine it with caffeine when you ingest it. So I would start this cycle at 10 milligrams of Anavar twice a day. After the first week or two, you will stop feeling the acute effects of the psychologically of the Anavar, and that's the point where I would go up to 30 milligrams a day. I personally have never run more than 30 milligrams of Anavar per day. There are going to be guys in my audience that are like, oh my God, that's crazy. I would never run anything less than 50, and they go up to 100. To me, I think these guys are getting fake gear. I don't know. I just don't know why you would need that much, but to each his own. To each his own. I'm not judging anybody. But if you're looking for the compounds that I think make for the best main gain, super aesthetic, cutting and or bulking cycle, test Tren and Anavar in moderate doses is going to give you the best bang for your buck. So if you take 500 milligrams of test, 100 milligrams of Tren E, and up to 30 milligrams of Anavar per the Anavar per day, obviously the injectables twice a week, you are going to look phenomenal. You are going to feel phenomenal, but you are not going to have so much Tren or Anavar in your system that it's going to totally trash your sleep. It's not going to turn you into a psychopath in the gym. You're probably not going to be destroying your relationship. 100 milligrams of Trenbolone is very, very psychologically tolerable, but is still sufficient enough, no matter what anybody will tell you. 100 milligrams of Tren E per week is plenty of Tren to have an extreme God complex, to be feeling very aggressive, very good sex drive, and it is going to be enough to give you that Tren aesthetic. Your shoulders are going to be nice and round and hard. You're going to be vascular. You're going to be full. You're going to be very strong, very, very, very strong strength gains in this the first time you run it. You will be going to the gym absolutely loving life, because you will go to the gym and let's say you do 6 or 7 different exercises, you're probably going to PR in every single one of them in the early going. This is a great strength, bulking, or cutting cycle, and if you keep the doses minimal, you will have the least amount of possible side effects. If you choose to run these 3 compounds and you up the dose of the Tren, for example, to 300 milligrams of Tren E per week, hold the fuck on. You are going to be feeling every one of the known Tren side effects at that range. You will probably experience some negatively affected sleep. You will probably experience some acute periods of aggression, possibly paranoia. Tren sweats can happen at 300 milligrams per week. All of the classic Tren-like issues that you could run into. 300 milligrams of Tren E per week is more than enough to feel them. If you keep this blast short, if you choose to run Tren 300 milligrams per week and you keep the cycle short, no more than 10 to 12 weeks, it should be very manageable. For me, on 300 milligrams of Tren, I'm good for about 8 to 9 weeks. That's when things really start to get on top of me and start to becoming very uncomfortable. One of the ways to mitigate the negative side effects of Tren E is cabergoline. Obviously, because you have tests in your system, you're going to be running an amount of tests that you already know how to offset with 8x. The Anavar is not going to cause any aromatization or any conversion to prolactin. It's one of the reasons that Anavar is one of my favorite orals of all times. It's just like a freebie. You can run Anavar as long as you're running tests. Do not run Anavar by itself if you are a male. You will crash your natural testosterone into the toilet. So the Anavar is not going to cause you any problems. The Tren most definitely will eventually start to cause you prolactin problems if you run it long enough without cabergoline. Can you get away with it on, say, a 12-week cycle? Yes, you can. You will probably not notice the majority of the really negative effects until about weeks 8 through 10, and by that time you're going to be coming to a close, and so you're going to be good to go anyway. So there you have it. Test Tren and Anavar in moderate to extreme doses, depending upon what your objective is and how much misery you want to cope with and how many negative side effects you want. Obviously, on all of these cycles, you're going to continue to use HCG in the background at a minimum of 500 IUs twice per week. Now, if you want my favorite bulking cycle, this is a cycle that we are not going to even attempt to use for cutting. This is going to be a cycle trying to put on the maximum amount of mass that we can put on. You know, if you decide to do a dirty bulk or you're just less concerned about losing your abs, I try to maintain six-pack visible abs year-round. I do not like my midsection to get soft. And so using a cycle like this could push you into territory, well, certainly your calories are what's ultimately going to determine how dirty of a bulk it is. But this is the kind of cycle that I would probably use if I was not super concerned about maintaining the greatest aesthetic. So this is a cycle that I like to run in the fall after, you know, I live in Texas, so the fall is very long here. But around, you know, starting around the end of November, early December, running through, you know, early April, 3 months or so, I would run Test, Tren, and Anadrol. Anadrol is going to be a much better bulking compound than Anavar, and it is, in my case, very, very low side effect. It is nearly negative side effect free. Again, all of this is going to be based on what you choose your dosages to be. So again, if it was me, I would be at 500 milligrams of Test. I would be at 100 milligrams of Trenbolone E, and I would be taking 50 milligrams of Anadrol, 1 A-bomb per day. Generally speaking, I would split that into 2 individual doses of 25 milligrams, once in the morning and then probably once pre-workout. I tend to work out later in the day anyway, so it kind of times itself. I do not believe that medical science knows the definitive half-life for Anadrol, also known as oxymethylone. I do not understand this. It makes me mental anytime I'm reading scientific data, and they're like, we're not exactly sure how this works. It's like, what do you mean you don't know how it works? It's your whole fucking job. Figure out how it works. What is the half-life of oxymethylone? I do not think I recall ever reading anything conclusively proving what the half-life is. Because it is an oral, I choose to run it twice a day. Could you run 150 milligram A-bomb pre-workout every day? Yes, you absolutely could do that if you so chose. For me, again, if I was trying to do a decent bulk, because I was going to be really focusing on staying in a massive calorie deficit, and I wanted the least amount of side effects possible, I would run 500 milligrams of Test E or C, 100 milligrams of Trenbolone E, and I would be running Anadrol at 50 milligrams per day. Now, if you want to turn things up a bit, obviously, again, we're going to go up on the Trenbolone. For me, I would go up to 300 milligrams. I personally do not see a lot of value in going over 300 milligrams of Trenbolone. I think 300 milligrams of Trenbolone E is about the sweet spot. I've gone as high as 550, and I really didn't notice that it didn't seem to be doing anything more magical at 550 than at 300. When you have multiple compounds in the cycle like this, your total dosage is going to be up there. You're going to be putting a lot of strain on your body, certainly on your dopaminergic system if you're not used to this. And so again, this is a cycle that, depending on how long you run it and how high you run it, is going to determine the side effects. If you keep the doses low, like I mentioned, you can have very minimal to no side effects. The only real negative side effect that I ever experienced from oxymethylone, also known as Anadrol, is it produces an extreme level of energy in me. I have tons of energy for days. I will go to the gym, hit a 1.5 hour to 2 hour workout, come home, eat a meal, try to sit down and play a little Total War 3 Warhammer, and I will not be able to sit still and manage my armies in a meaningful way. I will be so agitated and just amped up that I will put my headphones on and go just walk laps around my neighborhood to just try to burn off the excess energy. Anadrol produces an extreme amount of energy for me. It feels almost as good as D-ball, but not quite. Anadrol is a very good feeling compound. You will feel very confident. You will feel very focused. When you're in the gym, you will have an extreme mind-muscle connection. It is good for bulking. All of these drugs are going to help you to put some serious amount of weight on your frame if you are in a decent calorie surplus. So that would be my go-to bulking cycle. This video is getting pretty long, so really, you know, these are the 3 cycles. There are the 4 if you count the HCG, these 4 cycles over the 5 years or so that I've been doing steroids, these cycles are the ones that have produced the most profound gains in either aesthetics or muscle mass at the lowest possible side effects. I guess I could add one more cycle to the mix, and we'll just call this like the most bang for your buck, maybe maintenance cycle. So if you have decided that you don't like getting off anabolics, you don't like going through off periods, you want to maximize your sexual performance, your psychological performance, your gym performance, and you want the least amount of side effects, you'll notice that with the last 2 cycles I gave you, there was an oral in there. If I could run Anavar for the rest of my life, I would. If I could run Anadrol for the rest of my life, I just might in the proper dose. But I can't, because both of these drugs are 17 alpha alkylated, which means both of them are liver toxic. Some people can take Anavar for extremely long periods of time without any trouble. If I run Anavar for about 6 weeks, not only do I start getting massively brutal back pumps in the gym, which is usually the reason that I know it's time to quit, but my AST, ALT levels will shoot up to 2 or 3 times the top end of the reference range. Is this a huge deal? No, because you're running it short term. But if you did that long term, if you tried to run Anavar year round with, AST levels in the 200s, this is going to definitely be suboptimal for your health. So none of the cycles that I've given you so far are going to be long-term maximum cost benefit analysis type of cycles. So to close this video out, if you want a cycle that you can run long-term that will help you gain if you're in a surplus, maintain if you're gaining, cut if you're in a deficit without losing too much tissue or really probably any tissue at all, it's going to give you an extreme level of confidence. Oh my God, excuse me. Extreme level of confidence and self-esteem. Basically, you're just going to be feeling primal and optimal year-round with the least amount of BS to deal with. That cycle is going to be testosterone, masteron, trenbolone. Despite what a lot of the big names in this community will tell you, trenbolone is absolutely not hepatotoxic. It is not hepatotoxic. It does not damage your liver. I don't know who started this nonsense. I have been running trenbolone at a minimum of 50 milligrams per week, usually a minimum of 100 milligrams per week for like 3 years now. And as long as I'm not taking a 17 alpha alkylated oral, my liver enzymes are perfectly normal, or they will be like 2 points high. I might have like a 50 where I should have a 48 or something like that. You can absolutely run trenbolone injectable for life and not hammer your liver. So for me, before I stopped doing testosterone, I would run 500 milligrams of trenbolone, 200 to 300 milligrams of Masteron E per week, and 70 to 100 milligrams of trenbolone per week. If you want the minimal side effects, again, if you want maximum gain, minimal side effects, then I would be at 500 milligrams of Test E and 3 milligrams of Arimidex to offset that. I would be running 200 milligrams of Masteron is going to be enough. Masteron does a really good job at offsetting some of the negative psychological effects caused by trenbolone. Masteron is like the antidepressant steroid. It's going to improve your D game. You will notice that your erections feel firmer and last longer. Your sexual interest is improved. Your aesthetic is good. It takes some water off the frame, especially when combined with trenbolone. 200 to 300 milligrams of Masteron is going to be a really great feeling drug that you can use long-term, basically indefinitely, if you're not too terribly concerned about your lipid profile. That is the one thing here. If you choose to go on long-term, 500 milligrams test, 70 milligrams of trenbolone is where I would keep this cycle. If you're going to be doing it super long-term, 70 milligrams of trenbolone is about the maximum that I can run before I start getting into sleep problems. If I'm running 70 milligrams of Tren, I take 1 sleeping pill per night, whether that's a Zopiclone or an Ambien. The second I even go from 70 to 100 milligrams of Tren, that is enough Tren that I can no longer sleep on 1 sleeping pill. So it'll take me a pill and a half or 2 to get good restful sleep, just at that tiny variance. That's what I'm saying. You don't need a lot of Trenbolone, guys. 70 milligrams of Tren is enough for me to feel it working in my system. It gives me some aesthetic, gives me some confidence, some aggression, but it doesn't turn me into God complex, can't sleep at night, Tren sweats. So right in between there, somewhere for you. Generally, I do anyway, just run 100 milligrams. But if you wanted the safest route would say be 500 milligrams of Test E or C, 200 milligrams of Masteron E, 70 milligrams of Trenbolone E per week. If you wanted to bump it up a little bit, then you could go 500 milligrams of Test E or C, 300 milligrams of Masteron, 100 milligrams of Trenbolone. That is my, what I call my life optimization cycle. I have run that long term, had perfectly dialed in D game, perfectly confident, everything that you could possibly want from a steroid cycle, you get it. And it has the least number of side effects possible. Admittedly, I do need 3 milligrams of Arimidex and about half of a milligram of cabergoline. For me, some of you might not need cabergoline at all in this cycle with such a low dose of Trenbolone. I try to min-max every little detail. I want my D game to be rock solid and work for as long as I want and finish on command and be able to use it every single night or twice a day. And without cabergoline in the cycle, I cannot perform that way. I can still perform better than the average 40-year-old man. So if you and your old lady are getting down 2-3 times a week, you could probably leave the cabergoline out of the cycle. You're going to be perfectly fine. You're certainly not going to be lactating, and you're certainly not going to be in the depths of any kind of depression on this cycle. So if you want a life optimization cycle with minimal possible side effects, Test, Tren, and Masteron is what I would recommend. Again, in closing, I'm not a doctor. I'm not your coach. I am not a legal professional. Do not break any laws. Do not take any of this as medical advice. This was just a video that I wanted to give to you guys so that you could have in one place all of my go-to cycles for your weird set of minors / elderly to a basic bulking cycle, a kind of all-purpose bulk cut, prepare for the gym, prepare for the beach, whatever, extreme bulking cycle, and then an extreme maintenance cycle. I personally, the reason there's no deep cut cycle in this mix is because I've never needed anything other than Test, Tren, and Anavar to cut on. You could obviously throw in anything you needed depending on how deep you were going. So if you were in an extreme contest prep kind of situation and you wanted an extreme cutting cycle, obviously that would look like something like, very low amount of Test because you don't want the aromatization, or maybe none. Masteron, Tren, Anavar, you could throw those all in together and get like a stage prep cycle, but that's outside the scope of this video, because if you're in a deep deficit, if you're preparing to get on stage, then side effects are the name of the game. You're not going to be able to cut. You're not going to be able to go into a deep cut without having a bunch of side effects. And this video was designed to be maximal gains, minimal negatives, and there basically just is not, in my estimation, other than that cycle where I said Test, Tren, and Anavar, you could do low-level competitions, with that cycle without feeling too miserable. But the misery you're going to experience from the cut is going to have a lot less to do with the hormones at that stage, and a lot more to do with the fact that you're probably going to end up crashing your estrogen. Your coach is probably going to take your T out at some point. And so you're going to break your D game, and you're going to be in a massive calorie deficit, and you're going to be feeling like death, and it's just not, that's not my game. So there you have it. For those of you who have been wanting, just tell me what to take for various different purposes, this is the video for you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of people putting their 2 cents in the comment section. I welcome that. Obviously, you're going to notice that in no point in time in this entire video did I mention the word EQ, because I have never used it. I am probably never going to use it. I know for a lot of you that is a staple. It is just not something that I've ever used, so I can't talk intelligently about it. So for all of you who are going to want to start screaming EQ in the fucking comment section, save it. I'm not even getting into it. So there you have it. Hopefully this has been educational, informative, and as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.